Hey guys, what's up? TPP here. Pursuing my passion. Quite often when I pursue my passion, I have to rely on my gear. So when I ended my last trip and I pulled my foot out and it was soaking wet, I knew it was time to replace my winter boot. When you have to shop for a winter boot, it's probably not the most exciting thing you have to do. But unfortunately, it is absolutely necessary. So what footwear had I been using for the last long while doing all these winter trips? Well, this is that boot. This is the Keen Summit County winter boot that I have used for the last 5 years. And in that time, I logged about 1,000 kilometers over 30 trips. So you can clearly see that this boot has done its time and it's served me well. In fact, it's still in actually really good shape. If you look at it, I mean, it does show a little bit of wear, but otherwise there is nothing wrong with it physically. The tread pretty much still intact, and the leather is now soft, but other than the fact that it leaked majorly, it is in actually great shape. And I'll be sad to part with it, but at the same time not, because I don't enjoy having a wet foot. So what have I replaced this with? Well, recently I was at Sale. Just a shout out to the folks at Sale and to say thanks for being a partner and helping support my many adventures. But yes, I was shopping at Sale and I came upon this boot, and it's the North Face Flow Shoot. Of course, it's just as a weird name as a Summit County boot, so I don't know how they name these boots, but regardless, it's not the most important thing I was looking for in the boot. There was other more important features. So let's talk a little bit about winter boots and the features that I look for in terms of the type of activities I participate in. And I think many of you guys know I spend a lot of time climbing mountains, cover a lot of distance on trails, but I still need certain qualities of a winter boot that's common throughout all the other winter boots. Namely, it needs to be waterproof, it has to be warm, and has to be comfortable. Being comfortable is a general characteristic or feature for any footwear, whether it's winter or summer. So those are the main features that I was looking for, and I was hoping to find some improvements in this boot over the previous one that I was using. So the first thing is comfort. I tried several boots at the store, and of course, wearing your boot with the appropriate socks or orthotics that you have is very important, because you won't really get a good feel of the boot if you're just wearing your just one pair of sock or wearing something that you would not wear when you're winter camping. So I tried this out with many other boots, and this ended up being the most comfortable one for a few reasons. Namely because it's got this thick gray midsole, which is made out of EVA, which is ethylene vinyl acetate. Now, this is the same type of foam that you find in running shoes. So I'm sure every one of you have had EVA foam underneath your feet. And so the more there is, the more cushioning it provides. And this boot has a considerable amount of EVA foam in comparison to my Keen boot. This Keen boot has it as well. You can see the gray part along the middle, but it's a thinner strip. And so this one, noticeably, is more comfortable when I was walking around in this store. And so I was really happy about that, because since I log a lot of mileage under my feet, every additional performance gains in terms of comfort will be less wear and tear on my knees and joints, and I was happy about that. So that's one comfort aspect that I was looking forward to. Now, comfort can encapsulate some other features. Namely, another one is the weight of this boot. Now, I wasn't specifically looking for something lighter than the Keen Summit boot, but if it was a little lighter, then I would be more than happy. But when you're talking about a lighter boot, there's always some kind of compromise. So this boot is about a quarter pound lighter than the Keen. So again, it will be beneficial for each footstep that I take, because it's, again, less wear and tear on my joints and my muscles. And but there is some trade-off. This winter boot is rated at minus 32 Celsius, whereas the Keen is rated to minus 37. So there's already a 5-degree difference between this boot and that boot. And the reason why is the amount of insulation that's in this boot. This boot has 200 grams of Primaloft, whereas the Keen has their own proprietary insulation called Keen Keen Warm or something like that. Anyhow, that has double the amount of insulation. I think it was like 400 or 450 grams. So that in itself adds more weight, but it also keeps your foot warmer. So that 5 degrees Celsius, yeah, it's a lot, but it's not a real big deal for me, because those ratings are based on an active temperature rating. So if I took this boot and stood around in minus 32, my feet will get cold. The only way it can get down to that temperature and you be comfortable is that if you're active. So the temperature rating is not a big deal. I'll take some of the hit from the temperature, but I'll also benefit from the lighter weight of the boot. So that's a trade-off I'm willing to accept. Okay, so that's performance. And that's comfort. So you got the foam, you got the lighter weight boot, and so that's the one aspect that or feature that I was looking for that I'm happy about. So what's another feature that I'm looking for? Well, we've already talked about how my boot failed and it's not waterproof anymore. Well, the Keen boot, because it's made out of a combination of synthetic material, leather, and as well as something called TPU, which I'll talk a little bit about later, it had to be waterproof by a membrane on the internal side of the boot, and that is with their proprietary membrane called the Keen Dry. Well, North Face has their similar proprietary breathable membrane called HydroSeal. But that is not really a really important feature for me, because I wear vapor barriers. I don't want to go in depth into the reasons why I wear a vapor barrier. The main reason I wear it is so that I don't saturate the inside of this boot with sweat. Even though it does have a breathable membrane, you will not remove as much moisture as much as you're bringing into the boot. And so that's why we wear vapor barriers. Anyhow, that's why having a breathable membrane is really not that important to me. What is more important to me is the material that wraps around this boot. Now, this boot is significantly wrapped or covered in a material called TPU, which I just mentioned before. That stands for thermoplastic polyurethane. And basically that is a material that's like a midpoint between rubber and plastic. Plastics tend to be harder, rubber tends to be more soft and pliable. Combine that together and you got TPU. And so you got this resilient but non-permeable membrane, which would be great for protecting against the ingress of water. So because there's significant amount of TPU, I'm hoping that this will last longer in terms of being more waterproof than the Summit County. So anyhow, I'm looking forward to trying this boot out in terms of its performance with this TPU, but if it lasts longer and keeping the water out, I will be a happy person. Now, just thinking, is there any other features that about this boot that are improvement over the Summit County? Probably a couple things. There is a dedicated D-ring here. This is to clip your gaiters onto. I did not have that on the Keen boot, so I had to kind of hook it onto the lace, which is a little bit more of a pain. So this dedicated loop will be way more handy for me. Another feature of this boot that I do like is that the back heel handle grip is bigger and it's got a bigger opening so that you could easily do this with a gloved hand to pull the boot on. And lastly, one thing I like about this boot is the sole of the boot is more soft and pliable than the one on the Keen. The Keen was harder, but this one, when I was walking around the store, it really kind of almost felt like a running shoe in combination with a thick EVA sole, but the outer sole was really soft and it was grippy. Now, the interesting thing about the North Face sole as well as the Keen is that they both incorporate a dual compound, or meaning that one part of the sole, which they call ice pick, I'm not exactly sure which one it is. It could be these ones here, because there's no documentation to show where exactly that is. But what happens is when it gets cold, those those components of that sole will actually get harder, and so they'll act as a little bit like claws. So it'll be a little more grippy on ice and things like compacted snow. But to me, it's a nice feature, of course, and for people who are using this boot to walk around the neighborhood on paths and things like that. But because I spend a lot of time in the mountains, I'm climbing and I'm descending, if it's slippery at all, I will not be relying on these boots or this dual compound. I will be wearing micro spikes, I'll be wearing crampons, and even snowshoes themselves have their dedicated crampons, so it will provide a lot more purchase than these boots ever will. But anyhow, it's good to know that they have this technology in there that will help give you a little more traction if you're walking in slippery conditions. So that's pretty much it. Of course, I haven't actually used the boot, but the timing is good because in less than 24 hours, I'll be headed back to the mountains, and I'll be putting quite amount of distance behind me. So these boots will have its first opportunity to perform, and I'm looking forward to seeing how well they perform. So yes, in the future, once I've verified how they perform and use them in varying conditions, I will do a brief review as to how they worked out on my trips. So thank you for watching this episode where I got to share my thoughts on the features that I look for in a winter boot. And if this was helpful to you, that's awesome, because you might be participating in similar type of activities, or you might be looking to also replace a winter boot. So that's all I've got for now. So until next time, TPP out.